The cameras were already rolling when President Ibrahim Traoré pulled the document from the mahogany folder. Live television. No delay, no script, just him. A contract worth $225 million and 32 million viewers across West Africa watching in real time. The French executives watching from their hotel suite in Paris had exactly 47 seconds to realize what was about to happen. 47 seconds to make phone calls, to shout at their screens, to watch a decade of negotiations turn into confetti on international television. Because when Traoré's hands gripped both edges of that 43-page contract and began to tear, he wasn't just destroying paper. He was tearing up 60 years of economic assumptions about what African leaders could and couldn't do on live television. The sound of ripping paper would echo through boardrooms from Paris to Beijing, from Washington to Moscow. And by the time the last piece hit the floor, the president of Burkina Faso had done something no one thought possible. He had turned a simple gesture into a revolution. It was supposed to be a routine signing ceremony. February 18, 2024, 3 p.m. local time. The national television of Burkina Faso had set up the best cameras in the Palace of State. The lighting was perfect. The mahogany table polished to a mirror shine. The flags of Burkina Faso positioned precisely for the backdrop. Everything had been rehearsed 3 times that morning. The contract, a uranium mining extension agreement with Constellation Resources International, had been negotiated for 14 months. Lawyers on both sides had reviewed every clause, every comma, every footnote. The company's CEO, Philippe Martino, was already on a plane from Paris, champagne cooling in the first-class cabin, ready to celebrate what he called the deal of the decade. But something had changed in the 24 hours before the ceremony. At 3 p.m. on February 17, exactly 1 day before the signing, a young geology student named Maurice Sawago had posted something on social media. That would change everything. She had done what no one else had bothered to do. She had actually read the entire contract, which had been uploaded to the Ministry of Mines website as required by the new transparency laws. Not just the summary, not just the headlines, but all 43 pages of legal text and buried on page 37 in subsection 18. 4242 written in language so complex it seemed designed to be misunderstood. She found it the clause essentially stated that all uranium discovered in the extended exploration zone would be processed exclusively through French facilities for the next 99 years at prices set by the European market standard, which was defined in an appendix as 30% below international rates. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the map in Appendix J, which showed that the extended exploration zone included not just the current mining area, but virtually all of northern Burkina Faso, an area larger than Belgium. Maurice's post, which included screenshots and her analysis, went viral within hours. By midnight, it had been shared over 1 million times. By morning, protesters were gathering outside the Palace of State. Inside the palace, President Traoré had spent the night reading not just Marie's analysis, but the hundreds of expert opinions that flooded in once legal scholars and economists saw what she had discovered. The contract wasn't just unfair. It was economic colonization disguised as partnership. His Minister of Mines, Robert Kabor, had tried to explain it away. Mr. President, these are standard terms. Every country in the region has signed similar agreements. But Traoré's response was quiet and cold. Then every country in the region has been robbed. It stops here. The morning of February 18 began with frantic phone calls. Constellation Resources lawyers were calling every hour, sensing something was wrong. The French ambassador, André Dubois, requested an urgent meeting, which Traoré declined. Tell the ambassador. I'll see him after the ceremony. Traoré had said, knowing full well what ceremony he was actually planning. At 2:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the scheduled signing, the CEO, Philippe Martino, called directly from his plane, which was about to land in Enugu. Mr. President, I am hearing concerning rumors. I trust everything is proceeding as planned. Traoré's response was deliberately ambiguous. Everything will proceed exactly as it should. Mr. Martino, the television studio was packed. In addition to the normal camera crew, international journalists had been invited. BBC, Al Jazeera, France 24, CNN Africa, they were all there. This was supposed to be a good news story, a sign of Burkina Faso's economic progress. The contract signing was scheduled for 3 p.m. to be broadcast live across the nation and streamed internationally. Ministers filed in taking their seats. The camera started rolling at 2:55 p.m. with opening commentary from the news anchor explaining the importance of the uranium deal for Burkina Faso's economy. At exactly 3 p.m., President Traoré entered the room. But instead of the formal suit everyone expected, he wore his military uniform. The red beret, the simple fatigues, the same outfit he had worn during his first address to the nation after taking power. It was a signal that many missed, but some understood immediately this wasn't going to be a typical ceremony. He sat down at the mahogany table. The contract placed before him by an aide. The fountain pen, a gift from the French government, lay beside it. The news anchor was providing commentary. The president will now sign this historic agreement securing foreign investment worth $225 million over the next 5 years. Traoré picked up the contract, but instead of opening it to the signature page, he held it up to the camera. Citizens of Burkina Faso, he began departing completely from the prepared remarks that was scrolling on the teleprompter. Yesterday, a young student named Marie Sordu did what none of our highly paid lawyers and negotiators apparently thought to do. She read this contract. Every word, every clause, every trap hidden in legal language. The news anchor fell silent, realizing this was not going according to script. This contract, Traoré continued, his voice calm, but with an edge of controlled anger, promises us $225 million. That sounds like a lot of money, but do you know what it takes in return? It takes uranium worth $15 billion at current market prices. It takes our sovereignty over our own resources for 99 years. It takes our children's inheritance and hands it to foreign shareholders. He paused, looking directly into the camera. They offer us beads and mirrors while taking our gold. Our ancestors would be ashamed if I signed this. The Minister of Mines, Robert Corey, half rose from his chair, his face pale. The cameras caught his expression of panic. In Paris, Philip Martino, who had just landed and was watching from the airport VIP lounge, was screaming at his phone, trying to reach anyone who could stop what was clearly about to happen. The French ambassador was already in his car, racing toward the palace, but it was too late. Traoré stood up, holding the contract with both hands. This is what I think of agreements that insult our intelligence and steal our future. And then, with millions watching, he began to tear. The first rip was slow, deliberate. The sound picked up perfectly by the studio microphones. The cameras zoomed in, showing his hands methodically destroying each page. He didn't rush. He didn't speak. He just tore page after page, letting the pieces fall onto the polished table like snow. The studio was absolutely silent except for the sound of tearing paper. The news anchor had abandoned any pretense of commentary. The minister sat frozen. The international journalists were capturing every second knowing they were witnessing history. In living rooms across Burkina Faso, people began to stand up. Some cheering, some crying, some simply watching in awe. In corporate boardrooms across Europe, executives were calculating losses, making emergency calls, demanding explanations. When he reached page 37, the page with the hidden clause that Marie Sordu had discovered, Traoré held it up to the camera before tearing it especially slowly. This page, he said, attempted to steal our entire northern region. Did they think we couldn't read? Did they think we were still the colonized subjects of the past who would sign anything placed before us? He tore it into particularly small pieces. The French ambassador burst into the studio just as Traoré was tearing the final pages. Mr. President, stop. This is a diplomatic disaster. You're destroying years of negotiation. But Traoré didn't even look at him. He simply continued tearing until the entire contract was in pieces on the table. Then he swept the pieces into a pile and pushed them toward the ambassador. Take these back to Paris. Ambassador Dubois, tell them Burkina Faso is no longer for sale. The cameras captured everything. The ambassador's shocked face. The minister's mixture of fear and pride. The journalists frantically typing on their phones and Traoré in the center of the storm he had created. Sitting back down as if he had just completed a routine administrative task. Now he said to the cameras, let me explain to our people and the world what this contract really contained. For the next 23 minutes, broadcast uninterrupted on live television. Traoré went through the contract clause by clause, explaining in simple language what each provision actually meant. He used charts that his team had prepared, showing how much uranium would be extracted versus how much Burkina Faso would receive. He showed the hidden charges, the processing fees, the transportation costs that would reduce the $225 million to less than $40 million in actual revenue.